Good morning, y'all. Y'all, yes. This is Tuesday, March 22nd, 9 a.m. This is the Winning Circle panel. Things I need to tell you. No smoking. Turn off your cell phones. Put the vibrator on if you want to. If we see you start to shake and jiggle and get up and go out, we'll know what happened. Our panelists this morning, I'm Tom Rudebock, moderator for the panel. I'm from Ohio. Our panelist is to my right, Mike Hogan, who is vice chairman of RPM committee from Omaha, Nebraska. Mike's, in addition to being a well-respected caller in that area, his background is in sales and marketing for several radio stations in the Omaha market. To my left is Mr. Paul Walker from North Carolina. This time. Paul is a caller down in that area, has 2 or 3 clubs that he calls, teaches for. Paul's had some background in marketing for one of the major telephone companies.
Not for long.
Not for long. AT&T. So, and we also want some input from you folks as we go along. This is called the Winner's Circle, and it ties right in with our theme for the convention. I'm hoping that many of you have gone to the website and read the Winning Ways stories. They're success stories from clubs across the United States, things that have worked for them. We are posting those with the hope that you can take those and adopt them for your area, create some enthusiasm and motivation. As we go forward today, we're going to ask the 2 panelists to make some presentations, and then we would sure appreciate any input that you might have from your communities, your areas, things that have worked for you that we can share. This session is being taped. Anybody that is interested in Winning Ways, the Winner's Circle, can buy this tape, the CD, and hopefully it will help some people in their area. To get us started off, why don't you put your hands together and welcome Mr. Paul Walker. Thank you. One other thing, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please come up and get the microphone. This is being taped. The blank spots on some of these tapes, I was just talking to Betsy Gotta this morning, who's reviewing a lot of these tapes, and she says, I'm going to put a tape together of answers and give them to somebody that plays this karma thing, and you come up with a question. Paul Walker.
Good morning. One thing that I never forget, my background is in marketing and also an electronics technician with AT&T. I retired at age 51. Excuse me. Anyway, I never forget that nothing is more important than an answer. Absolutely nothing. And that's paramount in everything that I try to do. Everyone has success stories, and we've had a few, of course. I call for 3 clubs in the North Carolina area, and then I do some guest calling in different places throughout the region. I don't travel too far outside of that. I don't want to be a traveling caller. I want to start by mentioning that hopefully none of you are satisfied with where you are in your life. We all need to improve. Progress is absolutely impossible without change. And we have to change. Our culture has changed. Our society has changed. And all those changes mean that we have to change in the way we market our programs. And they change sometimes year to year and then region by region. I remember one time in the AT&T was coming up with a first computer program, and I was in marketing. I was a marketing manager of a group. They used a little 3x5 card to track their orders, and on those 3x5 cards were some dates where the equipment had to be shipped or something had to be installed. And if it was on the 10th of the month that something was due, they put that in a little slot on their little card holder on the 10th. And that's how we tracked the orders. Well, they came up with a computer. The orders were entered, and then the next day you would get all those items that need to be checked on that day. And that's the way we were supposed to work. My group was continuing to fill out the 3x5 cards, continuing to use the computer. No one trusted the computer. But that was the way it was going to be. One Saturday I went in, took all the card systems out, put them in a box and put them in a closet. Monday morning they came in, and you should have seen those people scurrying around their desk, opening drawers, looking everywhere. And two people come up to me and said, "Mr. Walker, our control cards are missing." And I said, "What control cards?" And then I was called something I can't repeat. But I'll tell you one thing, they learned quick to become the most efficient group in the business right then, because they had to go to it. We're not much different. We have to change. I have a handout that I would like to give to you with some of the things we have done. I'm going to go ahead and pass this card out at the same time. Okay. And things that we try don't always work, and they'll work one year, and the following year they won't work. In the 30s, Western Electric conducted a series of psychological testing to see what change did to the amount of production of the workers. They changed things like the temperature, changed things like the amount of lighting. They changed things like celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, and so forth. They changed by the way they paid the people. If the more they produced, the more they got paid. Every time they changed, production increased. Then it began to trail off and started going back to their normal production levels. What they proved was that no matter what the change was, production was increased. And we need to come up with different ways of motivating our dancers. In that handout, there are things that are covered, such as ideas for recruiting new dancers, how to bring out the best in people, how to be a leader, 24 ways to motivate yourself, invitational handout cards. And I'm going to go ahead, because most of this stuff you can go ahead and basically just go ahead and read. And I want to read something from you from the front page. That it says here, and in September, October 2004 issue of Direction, CALLERLAB Chairman Tim Crawford wrote this: "The one thing I do know is that if I continue doing and thinking the way I am now, I will eventually be out of business." Tim further wrote, "We do know that we won't find solutions if we use the same thinking we did when we created these problems. Think differently." Henry Kissinger wrote in his book, Years of Renewal, "For any student of history, change is the law of life. Any attempt to contain it guarantees an explosion down the road. The more rigid the adherence to the status quo, the more violent the ultimate outcome will be. Not that we're going to turn violent because we make change, but if we don't change, we're just plain going to die." One of the most effective things that we did was we made a little 3x5 card. We divided our small little city up into grids. Each couple took a grid. They put up flyers, and they took these 3x5 cards, and on between 10 and 12 in the morning went to the shopping center in their area and put a 3x5 card with an invitation to our open house. Put it in the driver's side window, not on a windshield. You put it on a windshield, the driver doesn't see it, He sees it out there, says a few words, and then he gets out, takes the thing and throws it in the floor and never reads it. Throws it, gets rid of it. Put it on the passenger side, he'll pick it up, put it in his pocket, get in his car. We did that all over the city for the month of August. That year we had 98 students, and 74 of them graduated. We were dancing anywhere from 19 to 21 squares every Tuesday night. And it really worked. A very successful club. Another thing that we did, and I believe in this very religiously, is that not everybody can be a marketing or a salesperson. And so what we did, we had a lesson promotion seminar where we had a potluck supper at 5:30, the seminar was from 6:30 to 7:30, and then we had a fun dance at 7:30 to 10. We invited people to come, bring your favorite food, we'll all break bread together, and then we taught them how to recruit. We had a very successful year that year. I think we added I want to say around 130 people of new dancers to our area, which was good. And it also motivates people and it gets them excited. I'm not going to cover some of this stuff because most of you can read. So we also did a survey in Northeast Florida on how dancers got into square dancing. And 87% of them were invited by somebody. They didn't see it on the billboards or whatever we had. When you set up something for recruitment, take some risks. You never know what is going to work. You really don't. If there's a couple, set up a reward system of the person that brings the most people in to the new dancers dance, and they graduate, give them a year free dancing. Nice incentive. Nice incentive. And if they bring in a lot of people, it pays for itself. It pays for itself. Okay. The only other thing that I want to do before I hand this back to Tom is I want to invite everybody to come to Charlotte next year. That's where the Callers Convention will be. And there will be a special announcement, I believe, in the morning about how we're going to show you some real Southern hospitality, especially for those of you that are going to be flying in. I think you'll be surprised at what we're going to set up for you. And I have some pre-convention flyers I would like for you to take a handful of them, take them back to your club, and try to get those people to come to the convention. It's going to be held in June of 2007. It looks like we're going to have a good one. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. One of the things I neglected to mention, as far as your resume, Paul is the publicity chairman, is that correct, for the 2007 convention in Charlotte. Going to hand the mic over to Mike Hogan from Nebraska. Mike is chairman of, or vice chairman of the RPM committee. Did a heck of a good job on putting together a recent marketing plan, and we're going to let Mike talk about some of his experiences and some of the things he did, and then I've got a few things to tag on, and then again we want you to add what we talked about.
Good morning. Surprise. I honestly had no idea that I was on this panel, and I did walk in and plan to sit down there by one of my friends and find out what was going on. So I've just scratched out a list of a couple of things that I can come up with just off the top of my head. So I'll kind of hit those real quick. How many of you heard of fast track lessons? I'm starting to. I know there's a session on it this year here at CALLERLAB. I'm starting to hear a lot more stories about it. I'm sure all of you have heard of multi-cycle programs by now, and there are a lot of different variations of how to do a multi-cycle program. I'm not going to bore you with details. I'll just tell you that I do multi-cycle in Omaha with a caller friend of mine, and we managed to have ongoing lessons, graduating 4 classes a year now for when was Kansas City CALLERLAB? 7 years ago? Something along those lines. And so we have graduated 28, 30 classes, something along those lines, since that time frame, when normally we would have graduated 7, assuming that we had enough people to have a class. And then, of course, a lot of clubs are still doing the traditional method. One of the things that I kind of came to a conclusion on as I talked to a lot of people about the different kinds of programs that they're offering. Number one is, if we're going to be proactive and we're going to recruit dancers, and when I say proactive, I know that we all like to square dance, and I know that a lot of our dancers will tell you that they've asked all of their friends. And when somebody says, "Oh, you're a square dancer, I'm interested," well, sure, they'll say, "Well, come on to our class." But if we're going to get active again and actually going out and trying to recruit people to come in, we need to offer classes more than once a year. Now, that's not to say that I don't think that there's a place for the traditional style of teaching, which could be anywhere from 20 to 40 weeks or 50 weeks, depending on whether you're teaching all the way through the Plus program, if you're teaching every week, and so forth. So there's a lot of areas that start in September and they teach all year round, and they start again the next September. What I am saying is that regardless of the method you use, if we start recruiting, we have to have the opportunity from the time that somebody expresses an interest to get involved in the activity to the time that they start. That window's got to be a very short period of time. Okay, so I would really encourage the local associations to start talking about these kind of things, and the local callers associations to talk about those kind of things, and say, okay, Club A, we're going to start in September. Club B, we're going to start in November. Club C, we're going to start in January, and so forth, and kind of foster that spirit of cooperation, so that as we are recruiting on an ongoing basis, there's always an opportunity within a short window of time to get those people involved. And that same system works whether you're offering multi-cycle. Multi-cycle works nice into that type of a program because it's the same group that's doing a class every 3 months or whatever it is. But even the fast-track system. If we do a fast-track system, let's do a fast-track system every 3 months, so that we've got an opportunity for people to get involved. I also know that as we are recruiting, it is taking me longer to teach the same set of calls than it used to. And that is a direct correlation with the age of the dancers that are coming into my dance class. Okay? So what I love about having, and this goes back to, I'm trying to tie this back into a success series, because I have heard a lot of successes in a lot of these different formats. What I love about having all of those different formats is, I'm telling you now, if you're able to recruit a bunch of young adults or teenagers, the fast track system is fantastic. You can literally get in, go through, we'll come back, okay. You can literally get those people in, and they have, at that young age, because their minds they're still in that learning state, they've been through college, their minds are all about absorbing stuff. You can put them into a fast track system. You can show them how to do a spin chain through if you want, and one time, and they've got it. And they go, okay, what's next? And you just keep throwing it at them. And as your dancers, as the age of your dancer gets older in your class, you have to spend more time with those calls. So that might be a system where one of the other methodologies of teaching would work. So I would encourage you to look into all of those and encourage your local dance associations and your local callers to think differently about how they teach. I'm going to be very interested to see if some of us take back the challenge that the PPC was talking about of you know what, let's experiment, let's try some other things. There's nothing wrong with a caller saying, okay, I'm going to stop at call number 42. I don't know what 42 is. And then I'm just going to call for a while for a group at that. And if it establishes into a club, great. And it maybe doesn't have a name, it's not an established list yet, but it's an opportunity for somebody to get through a class and see what the results of some of those things are. This comes back to what Paul was saying. We've got to think differently about how we go about it, about how we present it, about how we teach it, and about how we market it. Here's some couple of quick success stories. little bitty town in north central Nebraska, the very favorite town in the country, on February 14th, a little town called Valentine, Nebraska. They do about twice their normal mail business on one day in Valentine, Nebraska on February 14th. Everybody's got to get postmarked. Anyway, they used to have kind of a vibrant club up there, and then it kind of died off and went away and folded up, and nobody danced. And Valentine is literally right in the smack middle of nowhere. Granted, there's some small towns around, but the next big town is probably about 100 miles away, called Winter, South Dakota, population 3,300. That's the next big town, you know. So that's the kind of area you're talking about. Well, here's what happened. A local caller, Mary Chandler Paul, moved back to the Valentine area. Her husband teaches at the high school. And a dancer found out that, hey, we've got a caller back in our area. And that dancer did one thing and one thing only, got real excited about square dancing. And everything else that he did was a result of being enthused about square dancing again. And he went out and he found all of his friends that used to dance. And those friends found a bunch of friends that had an interest in dancing at one time. And now they have a very vibrant club again. And all it was about, it wasn't about how he went about marketing. It was about having enthusiasm. Pure and simple. And now they have a very nice club up there. We have, in Omaha, we have a very nice college, actually university, called Creighton University. They got into the NCAA tournament. Lost in the first round. And we have a couple of dancers in Omaha that are professors at the university. And Mickey Mallenby, I'll make sure she gets a copy of the tape since I'm talking about her. She went to the dean and said, you know, square dancing uses lots and lots of fractions and lots of mechanical. There's a lot of mechanical to the dance, which is really great. It's a practical, an actual hands-on experience of using the math that we teach on a dance floor. Plus, it's a great social activity, which the kids are looking for because they're all hooked up in these dorms and they're just hanging out, and there's no alcohol involved. And so the dean said, all right, if you'll get a caller to come in and teach it, I'll allow you to give your students extra credit for taking your square dance class. So their calculus students get extra credit for taking square dancing. Now that's just out of the box thinking. It's just different, but it worked. Now I can't say that we've got a bunch of those kids on our dance floor, but I can say that there are a lot of kids that have come through that university that have a much different opinion about square dancing today. And as they get older and as their life goes on, they will be approached again when they're through their college years by somebody about square dancing, and we have a great opportunity to get those people involved when that happens. So that's a kind of a nice story. The last one, I wish I had more details on it. However, I'll tell you a little bit. In Minnesota, some of you may have heard about a video program that they're doing in the state of Minnesota. It is on Winning Ways now. So if you want to go to the website and look it up. Excuse me. There were some dancers up there that had gone to the public access cable channel and went in, and they actually have a lot of rules and regs about what they have to do for that public access. So if you'll go and you'll get trained, they will provide you the equipment to produce your own shows. There was a couple that went, received the training in working with, I believe it was a student. I wish, like I say, I would have printed it out and had all the details, but they're at one of the local cable channels. One of their news reporters actually did a complete half-hour program about square dancing. She researched it. She went to their state convention. She shot lots of video, shot a lot of, not just so much video of dancing, it was much more video interviews and testimonials from dancers about health, about both the physical and mental health, about the social part of dancing. A lot of the things that we know are the benefits that square dancing offers to people. Okay, put that together in a little half-hour documentary, and they got that on cable, okay, on the public access channel. From there, they started to do a series, and they took their equipment and they went to a variety of the bigger dances around. And I haven't seen very many of the videos after that first one, but they've been able to do a series where they go from various districts around the state, and they've got these videos put together, and they're now on. The last I heard, they were on 20-some odd cable outlets around the state of Minnesota, and they're starting to see the results because they're now starting to see people in their classes that have seen the video. These gentlemen alluded to the marketing plan that I wrote with a lot of help. I want to make sure that everybody knows that I got lots of input from a lot of people. All that really, it's a chronologic plan with specific tactics that we can use to recruit dancers back into square dancing. And what all of these things are different things that are included within that plan. My hope is that we can actually collect a lot of these winning ways and build a lot of that in, so that the dancers, if they pick up all or a portion of that, well, won't just know what we need to do, but how to do it. And here's an example of where it's been done and where it's worked successfully. A lot of it is stuff that we already know how to do, and a lot of it is thinking out of the box. So not knowing that I was going to be here, that's about all I can come up with off the top of my puny little brain. So thanks. Tom?
Thanks, Mike. He mentioned the Minnesota Video Project. CALLERLAB has received permission to use, I think it was the first video they did. Mike happens to be in it, one of the interviews. But it's about 20 minutes long. It's been condensed down to an infomercial type product. As I mentioned, CALLERLAB has permission to use it. We can sell it without, we're not allowed to make a profit. But if anybody might be interested in that infomercial, copies are available from the home office. If you, and what I call the trailers on them, with the Minnesota information, the telephone numbers, the contacts there, the cost is $10. If you want a video with no information on it, it's $15. And we can also go to the point of putting your club or individuals' names on it with contact names on it, and the extra editing costs on that, it's available for $20. And this is very well done, professionally done. Shows dancing not only in what we might call formal square dance attire, but also in casual attire. It shows youth dancing. As Mike mentioned, there's interviews with dancers talking about the social aspects of square dancing, the health aspects, and I think it's even mentioned about some travel opportunities that are involved in it. But again, that's available. If you just contact the home office, and they can get those for you. Some interesting information that the CALLERLAB board authorized a year ago, just recently received the breakdown on it. They authorized an internet survey. It went out to, there's a company out there that this is all they do. They have a database that they send these things to, these surveys to, and it came back surprisingly to many of us. There is about 10% of our population, based on a survey, that has been exposed to square dancing over the years. The survey also indicated, and if you even take out the some error margin, that our recruiting over the last decade has remained pretty stable. Our problem is we're losing 50% of our recruits after the first year. We're losing another 30% after the second year. So then if you factor in those that we lose through attrition, be it health, job, whatever, that number goes down even smaller. So I think one of the things that we need to be working hard on in our clubs, local organizations, is that M part of the RPM committee, the maintenance, maintaining. What can we do? What have you done? What has worked for you to, once we get these dancers in the door, to keep them beyond that first year? And I know you've all been alluded to the book Bowling Alone, which shows that our baby boomer society are not joiners. You know, this year they try square dancing. Next year it might be bowling. Next year it might be something else. It's just the quote unquote the nature of the beast. But what is working for you, that once we get these people in the door, that we can keep them there and keep them coming back? What's your club doing that would do that? Mike also alluded to Clark Baker's talk yesterday in the PPC, encouraging. Mr. Mazziotti's back there, and he can maybe expand upon that a little bit, about encouraging some experimentation within your local community. Maybe we're not going to take all these people clear through the mainstream or the plus program, but what are we doing that, even using a limited number of basics? What's working in your area? These people are all square dancers. Maybe, and as Mike alluded, maybe some of them will never go beyond that 20th or 30th basic that's on the list, whatever it might happen to be. But these people are still square dancers, and there's always those people that want that additional challenge, that maybe we can, if that's what they want, we refer them on to one of the local clubs that is going a little further. But we don't want to necessarily push these people beyond that point where they're comfortable. Some people just want a social night out once a month, twice a month, that type of thing. And you can only take those people so far in that square dance program, and still provide them a good time, and let the others join as they may wish. Having said that, we'd like to open this up to any thoughts, suggestions, what's working in your area. I see Mike's going to get up. He wants to move, and so he's going to run the mic for us. So we've got one up here and one back there, so and another one right back in the middle.
Yeah, please give us your name and where you're from, okay?
Doug and Mark Harris from Port St. Lucie, Florida. A couple of things we had going for us are our city hall. We now have a TV station, and they did a video of us, and interviewed Mark and I, and had a video of the square dance, but that currently got lost. The guy quit, and it brings an attention again that you have one available again. My goal is to get that back onto that Channel 20 TV somehow, because even the dancers and people around the neighborhood, I've never heard of this square dancing. How come it's not on there? How come I can't see the program? So I'm gonna, if I get a hold of this video, my intentions are to push City Hall to kind of get this back onto that program again, and see if we can go that route. The other thing is we have going for us the Columbia Hospitals. We are now working for them. We have a Senior Friends program for rounds and a senior program for squares, and they've hired me. They look all the hall rentals. I just go and do my work and come back out again, and they pay me so much a month, which is kind of a pretty good deal, really. But that's kind of working. You got to take who come through the door. It's a little bit cumbersome, because if some new one comes in today and you can't turn anybody away at any time, that's a little bit awkward. So I kind of broke it into different classes. We're going to have a newer dance tip right now. Now we'll have a little more experienced tip, and it's kind of working out not too badly. So but at least, and then it spills over into the neighborhood, into my own club or the surrounding clubs. Oh, there's somewhere else that we can go. Yeah, we can go over here too. So that is working a little bit better for us. Thank you.
Virgil Forbes from Laurel, Maryland. I call for 4 groups at the moment. I hesitate to call them a seniors group because they don't like that title. They live in a mature adult community. You got to be 60 to move in. One of the things we've been doing, over the years, obviously we've lost a lot of members because one half of the couple has passed away or had such serious health problems they couldn't continue. And I've got them going back through the membership rosters of 10 and 15 years ago. I know that makes some of them very old, and let's find the people who have been square dancers before and try to bring them back. A, it shortens the teach time. B, after 3 or 4 years of being a widow, somebody's ready to come back and find something that gets them out and socializing. And that has brought me more new members to the club than the actual recruiting of new people. It also shortens the teach time, which is not to be despaired. One of my other groups is kind of down in southern Maryland, down in what can politely be called tourist area. So all summer long they run around. They've printed up a real high quality, looks like a concert ticket or a dance ticket, $7 value, and then they overstamp it with red letters, complimentary. Last year they handed out about 1,500 of those, and we had like 90 people show up at the first nighter. Of course, about 20 of them have shown up at the first nighter every year for the last 8 years, but they square dance once a year, but they're having a good time. But I've been regularly getting 2 and 3 square classes from just that in an area where other callers are happy to get 2 students.
Dick Mazziotti from Luray, Virginia. Tom mentioned the program policy initiative that we've started, and one of the reasons that this came about was that we recognized, the program policy committee has recognized that the current club structure is not going to change. It's simply too rigid and it's too locked in to change very much. So up until now, CALLERLAB has not recognized anything below the level of mainstream as being square dancing. And what this program policy initiative is doing is suggesting that we have to change our attitudes, and it's a change in CALLERLAB attitudes to start to accept the fact that if people want to get out and dance to the kind of traditional dancing that we are doing and retain the traditions of this wonderful activity, that they are square dancers, and that's what they're doing. And you don't have to be all the way to mainstream to be a square dancer. That says nothing to take away from the traditional clubs and the way the clubs are organized, but we have to start thinking about looking at other ways or other possibilities of doing it. And what Mike suggested or mentioned of doing a 10-week program, doing a 2-week program, doing a once-a-month program, doing a 4 times a year program, those are still square dancers, and some of them may eventually get into the regular club structure. Be ready to pass them on to that is a fine idea. But it was very disturbing to hear what came out of that survey, that within 2 years, all of that work, well, 70% of that work is down the toilet. Within 2 years, we manage, or the clubs manage, to turn people away, or for whatever reason. But we're losing 70 to 80% within 2 years. Think of what that number would be if we weren't losing, what our activity would be if we weren't losing them.
It's Doug Harris back here again. I said senior friends They have now changed their name U.S.-wide to Health and Happiness to You. They've eliminated that word senior because you get somebody comes in, oh, that's all the old people in there, so we're not going to join that program. So they have done away with that word senior. I used it this morning, but it's officially changed to Health and Happiness to You. That's the new name of the whole program. That changed all their files. Every letterhead had to be changed to get that word senior. The other thing I'd like to bring up is a segregation of people, whether it be the basic dancers, these triple programs, A, B, and C, red, white, blue. In our area, I kind of found that when they come through my door, you're a square dancer. You get the badge the same as the guy who's been there for 10 years. He's not a beginner. I had to do away with that. 60-year-old does not want to be called a beginner. We have a new basic program or a new square dance program. It's not a beginner program because they don't like that word beginner. So there's a few things like that we've had to change, and my flyers have all been changed. There's no beginner anymore, and there's no senior anymore. A few things like this, we've had to just kind of change our ways a bit. Thank you.
Yeah, Paul Walker from where am I living now? Oh, North Carolina. We've moved 14 times to California and everywhere in between. But anyway, two things. One is name recognition. And during Mike's presentation yesterday of marketing strategy, he talked about a logo that when a person sees that logo, oh, it's square dancing. That's one of the things we need to do. We need to constantly tell people square dancing is alive and well. Another thing that we need to take advantage of is some of the nonprofit advantages we have, and that is public television and public radio. Public Radio of North Carolina, for $260 donation. They don't charge anything because they're nonprofit, so it's a donation. You get your organization and activity announced 3 times for that day. $260. Let me tell you, that's cheap. Now, I couldn't do that too often, but your local dancers association could come up with that money. Your callers association could come up with that money. Your state federation organization can come up with that money. And you could raise a lot of money. It can be done. At $260, you could have that announced. Do it 2 or 3 times a week and just keep it coming. Just keep it going so that constantly square dancing is being thrown in front of the people's faces. And they'll begin to realize that that will work. Your state probably has a license tag program of a square dancing tag. We've got them on both our vehicles. And then I have a sign on the back that says, ask me about square dancing. You'd be surprised how many people walking through a parking lot will say, well, what about square dancing? I said, it's fantastic. Look at me. You wouldn't believe I'm 80. They still don't, but that's fine.
One of the things, some of the conversation here, and Tim Crawford has alluded to it, as well as several others, going back to last year's convention. We got to get outside this box. Think outside the box. You know, I don't care how wild the idea. I've talked to some of our clubs at home. We've sat down and had a brainstorming session. I said the only thing that is not allowed is it will not work. Let's talk about it. I don't care how wild it is. And then we bring it down to what we can handle. Again, thinking outside the box. I just lost my train of thought. No senior moments. Intellectual pauses. But one of the things that was in this video or marketing plan that Mike had put together for us last year, just this past couple 3 months, and a lot of the things that were shown in there is thinking outside the box. What has worked? How can we expand on it? If it hasn't worked, how can we change it to make it work?
Dave Sutter from Dubuque, Iowa. I'd like to ask Mike, as far as a marketing plan, where can we get some information on the results of that?
Yesterday, 3:30 in the Laffoon room. Yeah, it's we're a little off base, I think, of the plan of this particular meeting. But just so you know, what we did is we put together an ad hoc committee with several, both callers and square dancers, to talk about our activity and a lot of the issues that we're facing with recruitment, and we really dealt a lot with these kind of catchphrases, but we dealt a lot with image and awareness. If you remember the research that StarWorks did for us back in about 2000, I believe it was, where they did the focus groups. Well, we went through it, and I spent I don't know how many hours interviewing people through email systems. And it all concluded the same thing that we had already concluded from that StarWorks study. And I don't have all the verbiage here, to recite to you. But the bottom line is that they found it, and we know today that what people who are not involved with square dancing, what their image is of square dancing, is not what we do. Now, it's not completely off base because they do think, for the most part, they think a lot of square dancing is being more of the barn dance, a lot of the traditional dance, stuff that we are associated with, stuff that's our roots. But for me, one of the radio stations that I sell, I'll give you an easy example. I sell a classic rock formatted radio station. Okay? Well, I guarantee you that non-dancers would never, ever, ever associate classic rock music with square dancing. Yet we danced to Long Train Running. It's a great song. It was released by the Doobie Brothers. Okay, we danced to a lot of. I mean, even when we think of the Beatles, most people think of the Beatles as being an old group, and yet they would never, for a second, think that we actually danced to Beatles music at square dances. Okay, so their impression of what we do has really been, I believe, impacted by how square dancing has been presented in movies. I mean, there's a cartoon where I think Mickey Mouse goes square dancing or something, and I've watched. I have kids, so I've spent a lot of time with Nickelodeon the last decade, and there's square dancing portrayed in some of the kids shows, and it's always wrong. Okay, but that's what they see, and that's what their impressions are. So what we did is we said what we need to do is we always need to be looking at our product, but they don't know our product. So I don't think that we need to make dramatic changes to our product. Yes, I think we've got a lot of room for a lot of the new progressive music that a lot of the guys are using. I think we've got a lot of room yet to have more of the traditional sound of music that we use. We have all of that variety available. But what we need to do is somehow impress on non-dancers what we are, not what they think we are. We need to change their perception about square dancing. Because if we can do that and they understand the great social benefits of it, that the dance is good for your health and all of those other things, all of those benefits that they're looking for that we offer, and they realize that it's not the barn dance that they perceive it to be, our goal would be to change their perception so that instead of them, right now, the surveys tell us that they don't think square dancing is a bad thing. They absolutely do not think that square dancing is a bad thing. They just don't want to do it. It's not for them. It's not something they want to be associated with. But they don't understand what it is. So if we can get them to where they understand what it is, to where instead of them not wanting to be involved, to where now they're opening their minds to what it is and maybe piquing their interest in that way, then when we go out and we give the complimentary ticket for a free dance, okay, instead of getting 90, by the way, that's a nice number, but instead of getting 90 out of that 1,500 that we handed out, we'll get 180, or we'll get 270, whatever it is, okay? Because right now, if if you said, Mike Hogan, we're going to give you 75% off of liver pate and Swiss cheese hole cutters, I ain't buying, because I just don't happen to like liver pate, okay? So I'm not buying. And that's kind of our issue, is that a lot of these non-dancers have an impression of what square dancing is, which is not correct. And the only way that we can change that is by getting it in front of them and getting it in front of them positioned correctly. So it's a matter of first of all, the easy stuff. We need to have square dancing all over our vehicles again. You know, I mean, I know that here we are preaching to the choir, because a lot of us have the square dance logos on our cars and a lot of those kind of things. But we're at CALLERLAB, you know, we're more dedicated to this than most of our dancers are. I put in our presentation, and I'm going to throw this fireball back out, and you guys can get mad at me if you want. I think we would be smart to never use the square dance couple logo again. Now, I'm not saying that I don't think that we should. I'm not saying that we should get rid of the square dance dress. I don't think it would go away, and I like the look of a dance when all of the ladies have their garb and it's moving and the flow and all that. I think that's a great thing. But the non-dancer associates that dress with barn dancing, which is something that they don't want to do. Okay? So it's not that the dress is a bad thing, but to them, it can be. It also, the fact that there's a couple in a dress on a logo immediately says you must adhere to our uniform. Okay? They don't want to do that either. So in my presentation, there's three basic things that I built as the starter that's done, well, actually about four things. A starter that's done on a national level. One is a new logo. Okay, and you know, you hire a creative team that does that. There's businesses that create logos for people. I'm not, you know, I threw some examples at them, but you hire a company to do that. And maybe we have people within our square dance activity that do that for a living that can help us with that. But a new logo that we can adapt nationally. And the reason I say nationally is because right now, if Ohio's doing one thing and Nebraska's doing something different, you know, and Colorado's doing something else, it's not going to work nearly as well as if we had the same logo and everywhere you went, you saw that. And then non-dancers, when they see the logo, immediately, you ever seen this little swoosh? All right, the swoosh is, everybody knows the swoosh is Nike, right? They don't have to write Nike. They don't have to do anything. Just put a swoosh, and everybody knows that it's Nike. We need a logo that people are not turned off by, that when they see it, immediately they know that's square dancing. Okay? I'd like us to adopt a slogan. A lot of the T-shirts that have been going around for the foundation say, "Add quality to your life. Learn to square dance." I don't know if that's the slogan, but I think there's something that we should pick up that we use, and that we use everywhere, all over the country, all over the world, frankly, that's associated with square dancing. And it has to talk about the great things that square dancing offers. That's tough because you got to make it short. Again, I'll use Nike. What's Nike's slogan? Just do it. Everybody knows "just do it" is Nike's slogan. You hear that? Nobody has to say Nike. We need something like that again, so that non-dancers get that. If we can get to the point where they recognize a logo or they recognize a slogan, they know at that point that square dancing is alive and well. Okay? And then the third one that I think is critical, and that everybody that was on our panel, every single person that was in our ad hoc committee came back to me with, is we have got to do some kind of internet setup, some kind of internet marketing. Okay? And so we put together the idea of a national internet site, a national website that had a lot of very specific things to it. And the key is that website logo is on everything that we do. Everything. so that no matter where you go in the country, I came up with squaredanceamerica.org, and use some color themes, and with the idea that you could also have squaredancekentucky.org or squaredancelouisvillekentucky.org, and they all connect right back to the same national website. Lots of great stuff that non-dancers look at, testimonials, happy people, success stories, endorsements from the medical profession, all those kind of things that are on there as one part of the website, and the other part being, how do I get involved? How do I learn more about what a beginner dance is? The different formats of square dance lessons that are offered. How do I get connected with a caller or a club in my area? And all of that type of material. Okay, we talked about how some of the universities and the community colleges actually would like to have square dancing offered as part of their curriculum, and they don't know how to get a hold of us. We're right there in their community. They have no idea. And if we had squaredanceamerica.org on everything that we do, wherever you're at, all over the country, they would go, well, let's go to squaredanceamerica.org. And if they go there, not only could they learn a ton about our activity, they could also get connected back to us very, very easily. So those three things, but those have to be done on a national basis. And so I'm a little hesitant because I know that everybody's got a lot of initiatives that they want to do on their own in their own area, and I would never, ever want to stifle that. But I think that some of the stuff that has to be done on a national basis needs to be done, and we need to communicate it back out to those dancers. Okay, so the original question was from Dave was, well, how do I get a hold of this thing? Right? I'm not going to get the opportunity to present the entire presentation, to go through the entire thing with the Board of Governors, but I am going to talk to them tomorrow about it. Give them a very Reader's Digest version of what it is, and then coming out of that, we'll see what happens. I believe, and I've talked to Jim Matchko with the arts. I believe that if we're going to do something like that on a national basis, we probably have to move it to the Arts Foundation, or the Art, not Foundation, but to the Arts, only because we got to have the dancers on board with using that kind of stuff, as well as the callers and so forth. So I don't know exactly where that's going to come, and I'm not ready to just start emailing it around the country to everybody. It needs a little polishing yet, but it's there. I've got enough people asking me. I've got a lot of business cards with email addresses already going, come on, send it. So I'm really encouraged by the enthusiasm that a lot of people have picked up on it. If you got any questions about that particular presentation and things that are in it, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Otherwise, let's talk more success stories.
We do, Paul Walker again, we do demonstrations in August. There's a senior expo at the local mall, so we go out there and do this during the lunch hours. The types of music that I use, I set up my program to give the people an idea of the type of music that we use today. And my mom and dad were almost professional ballroom dancers, so I grew up with music from the 20s, 30s, and 40s. I love that kind of music. I was just a very young person in the 50s, but and I love 50s music. I love gospel music. I use any kind of music that's different, that's good. And what I do half of a song. And I tell people when I do that, this is another one of the type of music we have. Might be jazz. I have an opera song that I did, and I switched my voice to an operatic type. I can't do that all night, obviously, but not at my age. But anyway, vary your music so that you hit the funny bone of everybody that's watching you from the audience when you're doing demos. So I do about half of a singing call and then put on another record that's of a different style of music, and I think that's important.
Yeah, Mike just mentioned that was also one of the suggestions that we put on the website. But, you know, we've been talking about all these great ideas, and they're going to take money. We need to start thinking outside the box again. The business community puts 5% some areas of the gross, not just the net, 5% back to promotion advertising. I bet I could poll every one of you out there as either as a caller or club member, and it's not near that. This is something, this is a business we're in. We need to start thinking of it as a business and promoting it. And might come up with some figures just for the Omaha area, but just think if you as an individual put 5% in either cash or in-kind services, and our clubs took 5%, what kind of an advertising budget would be available? Any other suggestions, comments?
Yeah, there is, in the marketing plan, there is a funding program that includes the 5% idea and several others, so there's a lot of stuff in there.
Virgil Forbes again. Talking about exhibitions, and while it's not outside the box, it is something we have to remember. The face that we are presenting should not be the seniors. If you have only one couple in your club under 40, every time you do an exhibition, you better make sure they're there. If you're lucky enough to have a couple of teenagers in the club, grandchildren mostly of our dancers, make sure that they're in every exhibition, because the face we present is what we want the activity to become, not necessarily what it already is.
You just kind of promoted another idea in my head. We have an health expo every year, and it fills the whole auditorium of this. And I thought, well, Doug Harris, Port St. Lucie, Florida. On this health expo, you just give me an idea. Not only do a little bit of square dancing, but set up a booth with all the information in it, and possibly these new logos and all of the information. That's just an idea that I could do. Is acquire a booth at this organization, which is many of them around for different companies. So it may be an idea for us. Thank you.
Just, I'm kind of proud of the work that our committee did. So I just wanted to tell you that the idea of how to set up a booth, that's a tactic, and we talk about displays, setting up booths. When I say that the thing needs to be developed some more, there's a lot of, here's what you need to do, what we need to do when we talk about getting out. There's a section that talks completely about doing lots and lots of exhibitions and doing lots of opportunities just to get in front of people. But I see that he's gone now, but the suggestion about putting your youngest faces out there, those are the how do you do it's that all kind of went into the thinking of this, but aren't all lineated within the report. So that's some of the stuff that we need to do. But we did talk about making sure that if when I said logo, slogan, website address, if you're going to do a booth, I want an 8-foot wide banner hanging on the front of your booth with all that information right on it. And I want the video that Minnesota did, or the DVD, playing and available for people to take if they're interested in it. These are just things that a lot of different people are doing, and that's the nice thing about Winning Ways, is that we've been able to pick things that people are doing in a lot of different locations and bring them all together into one actual, chronologically laid out plan. It's the great idea. Now, how do I get that done, that we still need to work on? So keep sharing these ideas with us.
Paul Walker. I wanted to just say something, that one of the things that makes us strong is numbers. And when you get back to your area, invite other callers to become members of CALLERLAB. We really need to do that. And I've been to, I guess, 8 or 9 conventions now, and every time I come, I just get so pumped up, I almost don't need the airplane to get back home. And I meet with people that I see from different places, and they just come back every year, and we'll meet the same great people. We talk about experiences. There's so many things you can learn coming here. My wife was surprised. There's 9 sessions this morning. 9 that people are attending. And take a look at some of those and buy the tapes. When you're going to a dance, play those tapes. That's what I do. And so invite other callers to be members of CALLERLAB. Sometimes we forget to do that, and I think that's important for us. We need to rebuild CALLERLAB numbers too.
Going back to this internet survey thing, another thing that was surprising to me in reading through it, as far as our ad hoc committee, we picked a target group of 50 to 55, that range. Looking at the internet survey, approximately 50% of the dancers that responded back were in that 50-plus age group, meaning the other 50 were less than 55 or 50, but a big chunk of those were under 25. So you know, it kind of blows some of the thinking that we've had in the past, that, you know, our target market needs to be that 50 plus or whatever, and I still think that needs to be our primary target market based on numbers. But there's a heck of a lot of these people that have been exposed at some point to square dancing, which leads me to think that we need to be working with our schools, getting the right people into the schools, talking to the phys ed teachers, that type of thing. There are some programs going on. The education committee has been working on some of those things, and they've had a teacher program. I think it was in California, where they brought people in. And one of our board members is going to be talking to the professional, I don't know the exact title, professional dance instructors meeting in Chicago or Illinois here coming up next month. So again, those numbers surprised me reading through them.
Good morning, Chris Pinkham from Hillsborough, New Hampshire. I'm currently wrapping up a 5th year of a multi-cycle program, and I just wanted to step in here, and I missed it because I was halfway through a committee meeting. I wanted to come over here. But next session on selling multi-cycle is going to be on somewhere in the hallway here, and I would invite you folks to come in and hear about some of the folks that have had good fortune and success with their multi-cycle programs at home. And I'll also be taking about 10 minutes of that program to discuss a recruiting program that I've designed that goes hand in hand with schools, colleges. We've also talked about in the program the video that CALLERLAB has available for us. So if you have an opportunity to come into this, it's kind of an extension almost of what these gentlemen have been doing this morning, and it would be a good opportunity to hear about how some of the callers have been using that program and are achieving some very good success rates too. So please attend that if you can, and thank you for the quick blurb. I appreciate that.
Mike mentioned the fast track. I looked at the program, and that's a Birds of a Feather session at 5 o'clock this afternoon. Anybody that might be interested in more information on that, I don't know where it's at, in what room, but it is at 5 o'clock this afternoon. We're just about out of time. Mike, Paul, any closing comments? Anybody have one last one? Hurrah! Hurrah! Thank you all for coming. Just quickly going back, the marketing program is going to be, Mike's going to present it to the Board of Governors. I have already talked to a couple of them. I said we need to be prepared to talk about how we're going to get this out, make it available. That discussion will come at our board meeting tomorrow afternoon. But if you're interested in it, talk to Mike, talk to me. We'll keep your name and keep it on file, and when the right time comes, we'll make sure that you get it. I'm very excited about it, and I got to give credit to Mike for putting a heck of a lot of work into it. I had an idea that we needed to do something like this. Fishing around, Mike volunteered, so don't volunteer.
Thank you for coming. Have a good rest of the convention.